Many imitators have tried to capture the mental mastery of the former two-weight world champion Conor McGregor. But for our money, when it comes to picking apart opponents before a single punch is thrown, the Notorious is clearly on another level. Here are some of the greatest mental warfare weapons in Conor McGregor's arsenal. Conor the Executive. Conor McGregor is a man with a keen fashion sense, bringing a level of business flair to proceedings in a way that really does send a message. The way we see it, Conor dresses like he's got a stake in the company because, well, he kind of does. Or at least that's how he frames things. McGregor talks about post-fight whiskeys with the Fertitta brothers, speaks about Dana White like he's an equal.
Dana! 60 G's, baby!
And hell, he even decided to take the UFC president's spot on the podium at the UFC 194 post-fight presser so he could run his own press conference.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming here.
Look, we're not trying to claim that Conor has a seat on the board of anything, but he carries himself like he does. And he does everything in his power to try to talk down his opponents as a result, like they're lucky that he chose them for this red panty night that they have received. And that has clearly taken a toll on some of his opponents, with Dustin Poirier at UFC 178 being the prime example. Sure, he has his own McGregor Promotions now, but this guy was faking it until he made it long before then. Mystic Mac. No one truly believes that Conor McGregor had a genuine psychic ability to predict outcomes of his fights and overall career arc. But you have to admit it was a little freaky, right? Just imagine being Chad Mendes, hearing that Conor tried to bet Dana White several $1 million that he would score a second-round finish, and then he keeps his word. Sure, as the years went on, Conor's magic touch started to leave him, but everything from his knockout predictions to his goal of winning 2 championship belts, it all came true. Was the thing that made him such an irresistible star. But make no mistake, it must really have messed with some of his opponents, especially if they tried to follow a very rigid game plan. The whole Mystic Mac thing very noticeably took some of his rivals out of their element. Dustin Poirier and your chicken dance, we're looking at you. Conor the Commentator. Ask Conor a question about one of his fellow fighters and he will give you a very honest answer, sometimes a painfully honest answer. Dustin Poirier, a pea-head with no chin.
Dustin thinks it's all talk, but when he wakes up with his nose plastered on the other side of his face, he's gonna know it's not all talk.
Jose Aldo, limited, ready to fall.
Look into my eyes, little man. Little Brazilian. Ooh, vamos, hey.
Dennis Seaver, a steroid head.
My thoughts on Dennis Seaver is he's a midget German steroid head.
Chad Mini Mendes? Well, you get the picture. McGregor does his homework, there's no denying it. But it's the way he uses information to really hit his rivals where it hurts. Yeah, he's truly the best in the business at this. In the buildup of UFC 189's clash with Mendes, Conor repeatedly told Chad that he would be the first of the two to take a step back. He said it so often it raised the stakes beyond all belief. And when the fighter began and Mendes took his step back, there was one minor battle already won by Conor. McGregor is just about as blunt an analysis as can be. And he himself will tell you that he's not in the fight game to make friends. Thug life. It's one thing talking the talk, but when you fly across the world with a gang of your followers so you attack a team bus during a major UFC pay-per-view fight week, it does give you at least some level of credibility. Some of these fighters who talk trash do it just so they appear tough or sell a few tickets. But Conor, well, he's been involved in enough craziness at this point that it would be foolish to underestimate the lengths he will go to. Michael Chandler will be forced to contend with McGregor across several weeks weeks in the Ultimate Fighter house. And though the pair seem to be on good terms, it won't take for much things to spiral out of control. Imagine being Dustin Poirier, looking across the octagon while one of the most powerful men in the sport is sitting on the floor, leg broken, making very clear death threats in your direction. Conor has a nice side, for sure, but the dude is a legitimate crazy person if you push him. Sowing the seeds of doubt. Hindsight is 20/20, and while it might seem like meaningless trash talk at the time, Conor McGregor's snake in the grass comments towards TJ Dillashaw have aged like fine wine.
There's a little snake in the grass right there.
Not only was Conor able to understand what was really happening as Dillashaw put some distance between himself and his old mentor Uriah Faber, but it actually seemed like Conor was trying to do Uriah a favor by calling TJ out. Sure, it was a good viral clip, but McGregor's ability to sow seeds of doubt in his opponents is uncanny. Even against the unflinching Nate Diaz, Conor got very deep on his criticisms of several of Nate's teammates who were busted for ped usage, asking Nate directly how he couldn't have known how the scrap pack could ever been divided like that. The dude just knows how to push buttons. Labeled for life. What's the first thing that pops into your head when I say the name Jeremy Stephens? Well, unless you're a legitimate longtime supporter of the sport and this fan favorite, you're likely going to think of the whole "who the is that guy?"
Who the f is that guy?
line that Conor nailed him with. Stephens, who was sitting to the back of the stage during the memorable press conference, decided to take a leap of faith in that moment. You don't often get a chance to take a shot at the biggest star in the sport. And with McGregor just a few meters away, it seemed as though Jeremy had big plans. Maybe he would go viral by totally roasting the Notorious. Maybe he could even secure a big money fight down the line by sowing the seeds of a rivalry in that moment. Well, unfortunately, that's not how things played out. Stephens tried to claim that he, in fact, was the biggest hitter at 145 pounds.
Right here. Right here, the hardest hitting 145 pound, the real hardest hitting 145er right here.
Only for Conor to totally decimate his reputation by asking very bluntly who he was. Ever since then, the casual fan base of the sport know the name of Jeremy Stephens for one reason and one reason only. A few years later, McGregor himself admitted that the whole thing was just a bit of fun and that he, of course, knew well who Jeremy Stephens was. But the damage was done on this one, that's for sure. Conor has the power to really mess with your reputation if you cross him. The Army General signed to fight Conor McGregor, and you're not just getting in there with a sharp southpaw who has a blistering knockout punch. No, you might also have a few enemies to deal with, namely the entire country of Ireland and Conor's legions of fans globally. His opponents don't always end up feeling the brunt of his fan base wrath, and sometimes it's not a major factor. But in the past, fighters who have crossed Conor could barely show their face online without being attacked by his loyal supporters. And it's not just a pre-fight either. When the time comes to make your walk to the cage, you best be prepared for a total onslaught. Sure, fans of fighters like Khabib Nurmagomedov and Nate Diaz can be pretty damn loud in their own right. But during his prime years, there was something truly special about the way Conor's fan base responded to him. There was an electricity in the air every time he fought that must have been very hard to ignore. Just another day at the office. If there has been one constant throughout Conor McGregor's career, whether he's winning or losing, it's that he remains totally calm in nearly all situations. Okay, maybe calm isn't the right word, but let's just say that Conor rarely gets thrown off his game, even as he suffered one of the worst leg injuries we've ever seen in the UFC. McGregor was more focused on attacking Dustin Poirier and setting up a rematch than his shattered limb. When guys like Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman broke their legs in a similar shocking fashion, it was written all over their faces. McGregor, on the other hand, must have a pain threshold unlike anything we've ever seen. His ability to deal with pressure is truly astounding. And when some of his opponents step up to the plate and try to beat him, a lot of them find that the weight of the situation is too much. Every Conor McGregor fight is one of the biggest fights of all time, but for Conor himself, it's just another day at the office. He holds the home court advantage every time, and that's gotta count for something. Leave no stone unturned. As we mentioned before, Conor makes a point of doing very, very deep research into his opponents before they fight. And it's not just about how they fight and what game plan to put into use, but he also dives deep into their background, looking for anything he can use against him when the time comes to go head-to-head at a press conference. This was notable when he was in there with Dustin Poirier and Nate Diaz in particular. But the level of research that went into trying to provoke Khabib Nurmagomedov and his team was just on another level. Not only did McGregor go after the Eagles culture, his religion, his character, his fighting style, and his history, but he also made a point of targeting his team, his manager, even his family. Conor was so engrossed in digging up dirt on Khabib that he basically made a celebrity out of his manager, Ali Abdelaziz.
Shut your mouth, Ali Abdelaziz.
Going full private investigator on him by bringing up some of the shadier aspects of his life and even his relationship with his son. Again, it's hard to know how Conor and Michael Chandler will go about their business during their time together on Tough, but if Chandler or anyone else decides to cross McGregor, it's very likely that Conor will have some dirt on them immediately to throw back in their face. But what do you think of Conor McGregor's skills in mental warfare? And what's your own personal favorite moment from his trash-talking catalog? Let us know what you think in the comment section below before liking the video and subscribing to the channel to stay up to date with our newest video releases. Thanks for tuning in.